I'm Donna, 32 years old, and I'm standing in front of the pile of debris that used to be my childhood home. The hurricane took everything my parents had built on my grandfather's land, everything they'd kept me from claiming for 14 years. My construction crew is unloading equipment behind me, and I can't help but smile at the irony. You see, the last words my father said to me were, "You only come back here when you've made something of your life." Well, here I am, Daddy. Hope you're watching from whatever cheap motel you're hiding in now. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt completely betrayed by your own family. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Let me take you back to where this all started, because the sweet taste of justice is always better when you understand just how bitter the journey was. I was 18 when they kicked me out, fresh out of high school with dreams bigger than this small Texas town could contain. My grandfather, Pops as I called him, had left me this house in his will when he passed when I was 10. 5 acres of prime land just outside Austin, worth more than my parents ever imagined it would be. But here's the thing about greedy people. They always think they're smarter than everyone else. My parents moved into Pop's house the day after his funeral, claiming they needed to maintain the property until I was old enough to inherit it. By the time I turned 18, they'd made it clear that old enough wasn't coming anytime soon. "You're not responsible enough for this kind of property," my mother had said, her arms crossed over her chest like a fortress. "Maybe when you prove you can handle your own life, we'll discuss it." My father was less diplomatic. "You think you deserve this house? You haven't earned anything. Get out there and make something of yourself first." I packed my single duffel bag that night, kissed the faded photo of Pops I kept on my nightstand, and walked away from the only home I'd ever known. I didn't cry until I reached the highway. Then I cried for 3 straight hours in my beat-up Honda, wondering how the two people who were supposed to love me most could throw me away so easily. 14 years later, and I still remember every word of that conversation. But you know what? Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming everything they said you'd never be. I built my construction company from nothing, starting with a borrowed truck and more determination than sense. Brooks Construction now employs 43 people, and we're booked solid through next year. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd made my fortune literally building homes while being denied my own. Every foundation I poured, every frame I raised, every family I helped create their dream space, it all felt like preparation for this moment. And trust me, I'd been preparing. For years, I'd driven past the old place, watching my parents let it slowly deteriorate, the paint peeling, the gutters sagging, the yard becoming an overgrown mess. It broke my heart to see Pops's beautiful home falling apart, but it also fueled my anger. They'd stolen my inheritance and couldn't even take proper care of it. I'd considered legal action multiple times, even consulted with attorneys. But small-town politics and family court judges who'd grown up with my parents made that path complicated and expensive. So I waited, building my business, building my reputation, and yes, building my bank account. Sometimes patience is the most powerful weapon you can wield. The call came on a Tuesday morning in September. Hurricane Clara had torn through central Texas with a vengeance, and the damage reports were staggering. My crew was already mobilizing for cleanup and reconstruction work when my foreman Jake pulled me aside. "Boss, you might want to see the news report about your folks' place," he said, his expression unreadable. I pulled out my phone, and there it was, aerial footage of my grandfather's property. The house was completely destroyed, reduced to scattered lumber and twisted metal. The massive oak tree Pops had planted when my father was born had crashed right through the center of the structure. Mother Nature, it seemed, had decided to settle some accounts of her own. For the first time in 14 years, I smiled thinking about that house. The insurance adjuster's report was everything I'd hoped for and more. Total loss. The house wasn't just damaged, it was completely uninhabitable and would need to be demolished. My parents, who I learned were living in a FEMA trailer in town, suddenly found themselves in a very interesting position. See, here's what they'd forgotten in their 14 years of playing house with my inheritance. They were living on my property. The deed was crystal clear. Upon my 30th birthday, the land and everything on it became mine, free and clear. They'd been so focused on keeping me away that they'd never bothered to check the legal fine print. I'd had a lawyer review the will years ago, and the language was ironclad. Pops had been a smart man, smarter than anyone gave him credit for. He'd known exactly what kind of people his son and daughter-in-law were, and he'd protected me the only way he could. My 30th birthday had passed 2 years ago. Legally, I'd owned that land for 24 months. My parents had been living there as what amounted to squatters, and now their free ride was over. I called my attorney first, then my insurance company. Even though the house wasn't in my name, the property was, and that made all the difference. Within hours, I had authorization to clean up the debris and begin reconstruction. The insurance payout would cover demolition and basic cleanup. Everything after that would be on my dime, but money wasn't an issue anymore. Brooks Construction had been very, very good to me. The next call was harder to make, but infinitely more satisfying. I dialed my parents' number, my hands steady for the first time in years when it came to dealing with them. Hello? My mother's voice was tired, defeated. Hi, Mom. It's Donna. I heard about the house. The silence stretched so long I wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, she spoke, and I could hear the hope creeping into her voice. Donna, honey, we've lost everything. The house is gone, and the insurance. It's not going to be enough to rebuild. We're living in this tiny trailer, and your father's back is acting up from sleeping on that awful mattress. That sounds really difficult, I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. I'm actually calling because my construction crew will be out there Monday morning to start cleanup. Your crew? But honey, we haven't hired anyone yet. We're still dealing with the insurance company. Oh, you won't need to hire anyone, Mom. See, I own that property now. Have for 2 years, actually. So any cleanup and reconstruction decisions are mine to make. The silence this time was different. Colder. Have you ever had a moment where years of pain suddenly shifted into power? Share your experience in the comments below. What do you mean you own the property? My father's voice had taken over the call, sharp and demanding like always. Some things never change. I mean exactly what I said, Dad. Remember Pops's will? The one you probably never bothered to read carefully? The property transferred to me when I turned 30. 2 years ago. I could hear them whispering frantically in the background, papers rustling, the sound of desperate people realizing they'd made a very expensive mistake. Now wait just a minute, he started, but I cut him off. No, you wait. For 14 years I waited. I waited for you to do the right thing. I waited for you to honor Pop's wishes. I waited for you to treat me like your daughter instead of some stranger you owed nothing to. My voice was getting stronger with every word. Years of suppressed anger finally finding their target. We gave you a home for 18 years, my mother interjected. We fed you, clothed you, raised you, and this is how you repay us? The audacity was breathtaking. You gave me the bare minimum required by law, then threw me out the second I became inconvenient. But you know what? Thank you. Because being forced to make my own way taught me something you never could. How to earn what I have. Donna, let's be reasonable here. My father's tone had shifted to the false calm he used when he wanted something. I'd heard it 1,000 times growing up. We're family. Surely we can work something out. Maybe we could buy the land from you, make payments. I actually laughed. With what money, Dad? You've been living rent-free on my property for 14 years. What exactly have you been doing with all the money you should have been paying for housing? Another long pause. I knew what they'd been doing with it. The same thing they'd always done. Spending it on themselves while claiming they couldn't afford to help me with college, or a car, or anything else I'd needed as a young adult trying to make her way in the world. Look, I continued, here's what's going to happen. My crew will be there Monday morning to clear the debris. After that, I'll be building a new house. My house. On my land. You have until Friday to remove any personal belongings that survived the storm. And where exactly are we supposed to go? My mother's voice was rising toward hysteria. I don't know. Mom, figure it out. You had no problem telling me to figure it out when I was 18 with nowhere to go. I'm sure 2 adults with 14 years of rent-free living behind them can manage something. I ended the call before they could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear this time, from pure, undiluted satisfaction. By Thursday afternoon, I was sitting in my truck at the end of the driveway, watching them load their belongings into a rented U-Haul. My father kept glancing toward my truck, probably hoping I'd come talk to them. Maybe change my mind. Not a chance. I'd spent the week reviewing building plans with my architect. The new house would be everything Pops's old place had been and more. A sprawling single-story ranch with modern amenities but classic Texas charm. Wide porches, high ceilings, and a kitchen that would make Martha Stewart weep with envy. Most importantly, it would have something the old house never had. A home office where I could run Brooks Construction from the same land where I'd learned to swing a hammer helping Pops with weekend projects when I was 8 years old. My mother emerged from the trailer carrying a cardboard box, saw me sitting there, and walked over. I rolled down the window but didn't get out. Your grandfather would be ashamed of you, she said, setting the box down to gesture dramatically. He loved this family. He wouldn't have wanted this kind of bitterness and division. You're right about one thing, I replied calmly. Pops loved family. That's exactly why he left me this land. He knew what kind of people you were, and he wanted to make sure I had something you couldn't take away from me. Except you tried anyway, didn't you? She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up my hand. 14 years, Mom. 14 years you kept me from my inheritance while living in my house on my land. You turned your own daughter into a homeless teenager rather than honor your father-in-law's wishes. And now you want to talk to me about what Pops would have wanted? I started my truck. He'd be proud of me. I made something of my life despite everything you two did to stop me. And now I'm finally coming home. As I drove away, I saw her in my rearview mirror, standing alone in the driveway holding that cardboard box, probably realizing for the first time that actions have consequences. The demolition crew arrived at dawn on Monday. I was there with coffee and donuts, watching my childhood home get erased piece by piece. Each swing of the wrecking ball felt like closure. With every board that fell, years of resentment and hurt fell with it. Jake walked over as they loaded the last of the debris into the dumpster. Boss, you sure about this? Building here, I mean. Seems like it might bring up a lot of memories. I looked out over the cleared land, imagining the new house that would rise from this ground. The best memories I have of this place are from before they poisoned it. I want those memories back. The foundation was poured 3 weeks later, and I stood on the fresh concrete thinking about second chances. Not everyone gets to literally rebuild their life from the ground up, but here I was, doing exactly that. Word travels fast in small towns, especially when it involves family drama and property disputes. I'd been getting calls from relatives and family friends for weeks, most of them trying to play peacemaker, a few genuinely curious about my side of the story. My Aunt Sarah called Tuesday morning while I was reviewing electrical plans. Donna, honey, I heard about what happened. Your parents are saying you threw them out in the cold with nowhere to go. My parents are saying a lot of things, I replied, not looking up from my blueprints. Very few of them are true, but feel free to offer them your guest room if you're so concerned. Well, that's not really... I mean, they need somewhere more permanent. Then they should have thought about that before they decided to steal 14 years of my life. Aunt Sarah, I love you, but I'm not interested in being the villain in whatever story they're telling to get sympathy. They made their choices. Now they get to live with the consequences. The truth was starting to come out anyway. Other family members were beginning to ask questions about the will, about the timeline, about why exactly I'd been living in a series of crappy apartments while my parents enjoyed 5 acres of prime real estate. Funny how quickly people's tune changes when they realize they've been fed a pack of lies. But the call that really mattered came Thursday evening. I was at the property, watching the crew frame the walls when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Donna, this is Jim Patterson. I was your grandfather's attorney. I knew the name. He was the one who'd drawn up Pop's will, though he'd retired years ago. Mr. Patterson, what can I do for you? Well, I heard through the grapevine about what's been happening out at your grandfather's place. I wanted to check in, see if you needed any legal assistance. Also wanted to make sure you knew about the other provisions in your grandfather's will. My blood went cold. Other provisions? The trust fund, dear. Didn't anyone tell you about the trust fund? I sat down hard on a stack of lumber. What trust fund? Your grandfather set aside $50,000 for your education and getting established in life. It was supposed to be released to you when you turned 21, with your parents as trustees until then. He paused. Donna, are you telling me they never mentioned this to you? The world tilted sideways. $50,000 that should have helped me through college, helped me get my business started, helped me build a life instead of struggling paycheck to paycheck for years. $50,000 that my parents had been sitting on for over a decade. Mr. Patterson, I said slowly, I think we need to meet. What do you think I discovered when I dug deeper into that trust fund? The answer will shock you more than you can imagine. Chapter 7. Mr. Patterson's office hadn't changed since I was a kid. Same oak paneling, same leather chairs that creaked when you shifted, same smell of old books and disappointment. But this time, I wasn't the scared little girl who'd come here after Pop's funeral. This time, I was the woman who owned a successful construction company and was about to uncover just how deep my parents' betrayal went. The trust was very specific, Mr. Patterson said, sliding a manila folder across his desk. $50,000 to be released on your 21st birthday for education, business startup, or establishing a home. Your parents were named as trustees with the understanding they would guide you in making wise decisions with the money. I opened the folder and stared at documents I should have seen 11 years ago. Bank statements, investment records, and transaction histories that painted a picture I wasn't prepared for. The trust hadn't just sat there collecting dust. It had been actively managed, grown through conservative investments. By my 21st birthday, it was worth $68,000. Mr. Patterson, I said slowly, running my finger down the transaction list. What exactly does it mean when it says trustee withdrawal here? His expression grew grim. It means your parents took money out of the account, which they were legally allowed to do, but only for your direct benefit and only with proper documentation of how the funds were used. I counted the withdrawals. $12,000 when I was 19, another $15,000 when I was 22, $8,000 more when I was 25. The pattern continued right up until last year. By now, the account should have been worth over $90,000. Instead, it showed a balance of $3,000 and change. Where's the documentation showing these withdrawals were for my benefit? I asked, though I already knew the answer. That's the problem, dear. There isn't any. When I contacted your parents about the missing paperwork years ago, they assured me you were aware of the withdrawals and had approved them. They said you were too busy with your new business to come in and sign the papers yourself. My new business. The construction company I'd built from nothing, scraping together every dollar while living in a studio apartment and eating ramen for dinner most nights. The business I'd started with a $3,000 loan from my credit card because I had no other options. They told you I approved withdrawals from an account I didn't even know existed? Mr. Patterson nodded sadly. I should have insisted on speaking with you directly. That's on me, Donna. I was getting ready to retire, and I trusted that your parents had your best interests at heart. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mr. Patterson, my parents have never had anyone's best interests at heart except their own. So what are my options here? Well, legally speaking, you have a strong case for breach of fiduciary duty. Trustees who misuse funds can be held personally liable for the full amount, plus interest and penalties. We're looking at potential damages of well over $100,000. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Not the bitter, sarcastic smile I'd been wearing lately, but a genuine expression of satisfaction. How long would a lawsuit take? With proper documentation and clear evidence of misuse. 6 months, maybe less, especially since they can't produce any records showing the money was spent on your behalf. I stood up and shook his hand. Mr. Patterson, I'd like to hire you to come out of retirement for one last case. What do you think will happen when my parents realize they're about to face a lawsuit for over $100,000? The answer will show you just how far desperate people will go. Chapter 8. The lawsuit papers were served on a Friday afternoon. I know this because my phone started ringing at 4:17 p.m. and didn't stop for 3 hours straight. By evening, I'd received calls from my parents, 4 aunts, 2 uncles, 3 cousins, and the local Methodist minister asking me to find it in my heart to forgive. Forgive. That was their solution. Not accountability, not making it right, not even an apology. Just forgiveness. As if 14 years of lies and theft could be erased with a simple, sorry. I let them all go to voicemail. Every single one. Saturday morning brought a different kind of call. My father's voice was tight with barely controlled anger when I finally answered. Donna, we need to talk. This lawsuit nonsense has gone too far. Has it, Dad? Because from where I'm sitting, it hasn't gone far enough. Did you really think I'd never find out about the trust fund? That money was for your own good. You were young, irresponsible. We were protecting you from making stupid decisions. Protecting me? By stealing from me? By lying to me for over a decade? I was pacing now, my voice getting louder. Tell me, Dad, what stupid decisions were you protecting me from when you took that $15,000 in 2016? The stupid decision to maybe afford health insurance? The stupid decision to eat something other than generic cereal for dinner? We had expenses. The house needed repairs, your mother had medical bills. Medical bills that should have been paid with your own money, not mine. And those house repairs? That was my house, Dad. My grandfather's house that you were supposed to be maintaining until I inherited it. So you stole my money to fix my own property while keeping me away from it. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Smaller. Desperate. What do you want from us, Donna? We don't have that kind of money. We never did. If you push this lawsuit, you'll destroy us completely. I want exactly what you took from me. Every dollar with interest. And I want it because you owe it to me, not because I'm family or because you're sorry you got caught. And if we can't pay? I looked out my window at the construction site where my new house was taking shape. The walls were up now, and they'd start on the roof next week. My house on my land, built with money I'd earned the hard way while they lived comfortable lives funded by my inheritance. Then you'll find out what it's like to lose everything, just like I did when I was 18. The only difference is, I didn't deserve it. I hung up and blocked their number. I had a house to build and a business to run. I was done being their victim. Chapter 9. The discovery phase of the lawsuit was like archaeological excavation. Except instead of ancient artifacts, we were digging up layers of deception and financial manipulation. My attorney, working with Mr. Patterson, had subpoenaed my parents' financial records, and what we found was both infuriating and oddly satisfying. Cruise to the Caribbean in 2019, $8,000. New furniture set in 2020, $12,000. RV purchase in 2021, $23,000. The list went on, a catalog of luxuries purchased with money that should have launched my adult life. But the real kicker came when we traced the pattern of withdrawals against their spending. Every time they wanted something expensive, a vacation, home improvements, toys for themselves, they'd dip into my trust fund like it was their personal ATM. The timing was so blatant, it was almost insulting. "Look at this," Mr. Patterson said during our meeting, pointing to a particularly damning sequence. "June 2022, they withdrew $8,000 from your trust. July 2022, they purchased a hot tub for $7,900. A hot tub," I repeated flatly. "They bought a hot tub with my college money. And then told the extended family they were struggling financially and couldn't help you get established after graduation." I remembered that conversation. Aunt Sarah had mentioned it at Christmas dinner, how my parents wished they could help me more, but times were tight. Meanwhile, they were literally soaking in money stolen from my future. The house construction was progressing beautifully, and I made a point of driving by the property every day on my way to job sites. The roof was on now, and they were starting the interior work. It was going to be spectacular. Everything Pops' old house should have been if my parents had actually taken care of it instead of letting it rot while they spent my money on themselves. Wednesday afternoon brought an unexpected visitor to my office. My cousin Jake knocked on my door looking uncomfortable and slightly embarrassed. "Hey, Donna, got a minute?" Jake and I had been close as kids, but like most of the family, he'd bought into my parents' version of events over the years. I gestured for him to sit down. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "A big one. I heard about the lawsuit and Mom filled me in on some details I never knew. Such as the fact that you never actually received any money from your grandfather's estate. All these years when your parents talked about how you'd gotten your inheritance and blown it on bad investments." I believed them. I sat back in my chair. They told people I blew my inheritance? They said you'd gotten everything when you turned 21, invested it in some scheme that went bad, and that's why you were struggling financially. They made it sound like they'd tried to warn you, but you wouldn't listen. The audacity was breathtaking, even for them. They'd stolen my money, then used my resulting financial struggles as proof that they'd been right to steal it in the first place. It was circular logic at its most twisted. "Jake, I didn't even know there was a trust fund until 2 weeks ago. I've been building my business from nothing for over a decade while they lived rent-free in my house and spent my money on cruises and hot tubs." He shook his head in disgust. "I feel like an idiot for believing them. Is there anything I can do to help? I mean, with the lawsuit or anything else?" "Actually, yes. I need character witnesses who can testify about my financial situation over the years. People who know I was struggling while they were living comfortably." "You got it. And Donna? For what it's worth, I think Pops would be proud of what you've built. Your company, I mean, but also the way you've handled all this. You could have been bitter and vengeful, but you're just seeking justice." I smiled at him. "Oh, Jake, who says I can't be both?" Chapter 10. The settlement conference was scheduled for a Thursday morning in March, just as the finishing work was beginning on my new house. I arrived at the courthouse wearing my best business suit and the confidence that comes from knowing you're absolutely, unequivocally right. My parents sat across the conference table looking like they'd aged 5 years and 5 months. Good. Stress ages people faster than anything else, and they'd earned every new wrinkle and gray hair. Their attorney, a nervous man who kept shuffling papers and avoiding eye contact, opened with an offer that was both insulting and laughable. "My clients are prepared to offer $25,000 to settle this matter and avoid the expense and uncertainty of trial." I looked at Mr. Patterson, who suppressed what might have been a smirk. "Counteroffer," I said calmly. "Full restitution of $97,000 plus legal fees, or we go to trial and add punitive damages to the mix." "That's unreasonable," their attorney protested. "My clients are living on Social Security. They simply don't have that kind of money." "Then they shouldn't have stolen it in the first place," I replied. "But here's what I find interesting. They seem to have money for legal fees. Where's that coming from?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a gun. My parents exchanged glances, and I saw something pass between them, something guilty and desperate. "We sold the RV," my mother said quietly. "The RV you bought with my trust fund money? How convenient. What else have you sold?" "Donna, please," my father interjected. "We made mistakes, but we're family. Can't we work something out? We're not family. Dad, family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't lie for 14 years. Family doesn't throw their own daughter out on the street and then spend her inheritance on vacation cruises. The mediator, an older woman who'd been quietly taking notes, looked up. Mr. and Mrs. Brooks, I have to ask, do you have any other assets that could be liquidated to satisfy this judgment? Another glance between them. More guilt, more desperation. There is one thing, my mother said finally. We own a rental property, a small duplex downtown. My blood went cold. You own rental property? We bought it in 2018. It's been generating income for us, but we could sell it if we have to. The year they'd withdrawn $22,000 from my trust fund. The year they'd told me they couldn't help me with the down payment on a house because they were barely scraping by. Let me guess, I said, my voice deadly calm. You bought that rental property with my money, then used the rental income to fund your comfortable lifestyle while I lived in a series of crappy apartments, working 16-hour days to build my business. The silence was deafening. That's it, I said, standing up. No settlement. We're going to trial, and I'm asking for every penny plus punitive damages. You didn't just steal my money. You used it to build wealth for yourselves while watching me struggle. As I walked out of the conference room, I heard my mother crying and my father's voice, angry and desperate, calling after me. But I didn't turn around. I had a house to finish and a business to run. And for the first time in my adult life, I had something even more valuable. I had the absolute certainty that I was nothing like them. Chapter 11. The trial lasted 3 days, and it was everything I'd hoped it would be. Public records don't lie, bank statements tell their own story, and when you spend 14 years building a reputation for honesty and hard work, people notice. Jake testified about the lies my parents had told regarding my inheritance. My banker testified about my years of careful financial management, despite obvious struggles. My employees testified about my character and work ethic. Even some of my parents' neighbors testified about their obvious lifestyle upgrades over the years. The new cars, the home improvements, the frequent vacations. But the moment that will stay with me forever came on day 2, when my parents took the stand in their own defense. We were protecting her, my mother insisted, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Donna was always impulsive, always wanting things she couldn't afford. We knew if she got that money all at once, she'd waste it. Yet you used that same money to buy yourself a hot tub, take multiple vacations, and purchase a rental property, Mr. Patterson observed dryly. Can you explain how that was protecting your daughter? We had expenses. The house needed work, and we thought we could pay it back before she found out. Pay it back with what income? Your Social Security? The rental income from the property you bought with her money? The cross-examination was brutal and thorough. By the time it was over, even their own attorney looked embarrassed to be representing them. When it came time for my testimony, I kept it simple and factual. I talked about being kicked out at 18, about struggling to build a business with no financial help, about living paycheck to paycheck while they enjoyed luxuries purchased with my inheritance. What would you have done with that money if you'd received it at 21 as intended? Mr. Patterson asked. I would have paid for college without student loans. I would have had seed money to start my business properly instead of scraping together credit card debt. I would have been able to buy a house years ago instead of throwing away money on rent. I paused, looking directly at my parents. I would have had choices. And how do you feel about your parents' actions? I considered the question carefully. How did I feel? Angry, betrayed, hurt, all of those things. But also something else. Something cleaner. I feel free, I said finally. For 14 years, I blamed myself for not being good enough, smart enough, successful enough to earn their love and respect. Now I know the truth. This was never about my worthiness. It was about their greed. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and read their verdict. Full restitution of $97,000, plus legal fees, plus $50,000 in punitive damages for breach of fiduciary duty, $147,000. More than enough to finish my house exactly the way I wanted it, with money left over to expand my business. As the judge banged his gavel, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete, total vindication. Not revenge. That would have required anger. And I'd moved beyond anger into something much more powerful. I'd moved into certainty. Certainty about who I was, what I was worth, and what I deserved from the people who claimed to love me. Chapter 12. 6 months later, I'm standing on the front porch of my completed house, watching the sunset over 5 acres of land that finally, truly belongs to me. The house is everything I dreamed it would be. Spacious but warm, modern but respectful of Pops's memory. A home that reflects the woman I became rather than the girl they tried to keep me. My parents paid the judgment in full by selling their rental property and liquidating their retirement accounts. They're living in a small apartment in town now, and while I don't take any pleasure in their reduced circumstances, I don't feel guilty about them either. Actions have consequences, and some lessons can only be learned the hard way. The best part isn't the house, though it's beautiful. It's not even the money, though financial security feels amazing after years of struggle. The best part is the silence in my head, the end of that constant voice asking why I wasn't enough, why they didn't love me, what I could have done differently. I know now that it was never about me. It was always about them. Brooks Construction is thriving. We've got projects booked 18 months out, and I'm considering opening a second location. Success, it turns out, is the best foundation for more success. When you build your life on honesty and hard work instead of other people's approval, everything else follows naturally. I still drive past their apartment complex sometimes on my way to job sites. Not to gloat or check up on them, but because it's on the route. I feel nothing when I see the building. No anger. No sadness, no curiosity about their lives. They've become what they always were. Strangers who happen to share my DNA. Last week I got a letter from my mother. It was full of the same old manipulation. Appeals to family, claims that they'd been trying to protect me, subtle suggestions that I should share my success with them now that I had it. I read it once, then used it to light the fireplace in my beautiful new living room. It made excellent kindling. The house is quiet tonight except for the sound of crickets and the distant hum of traffic on the highway. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with a client about building their dream home, and next week, I'm interviewing candidates for 3 new positions. Life is full and moving forward. Sometimes people ask me if I forgive my parents. It's the wrong question. Forgiveness implies they deserve consideration they haven't earned. What I've done is something much more powerful. I've released them from having any influence over my happiness or self-worth. They gave me the greatest gift they could have given, though they never intended it. They forced me to become strong enough to succeed without them, honest enough to see them clearly, and independent enough to build a life that doesn't require their approval. I am Donna Brooks, 32 years old, owner of Brooks Construction, and this beautiful house on 5 acres of Texas land that my grandfather left me because he knew exactly who I was and who I would become. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more real-life stories of justice, second chances, and the power of never giving up on yourself. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well, and sometimes the family you build is stronger than the one you were born into. The sun has set completely now, and it's time to go inside. Inside my house, on my land, in the life I built with my own 2 hands and the unshakable belief that I deserved better. And I was right.